Welcome to this week's episode of Listen to Your Coaches. I'm your coach, Mike Wilkins, here with Coach Will Morrill. This week, we take on Reddit. Will, tell them what we're going to do.
All right, so I had seen some videos in the past of people going on to like Reddit or various websites and answering questions, right? And so I call Mike and I'm like, dude, we should get on Reddit. We should make an LTYC account and, we'll have it like picture in picture of you answering questions. And what was your response to that?
Absolutely not.
Tell me.
I said I would rather quit doing the podcast than do that. I was like, if the choices were giving up on this podcast or having to do that, I was like, I'll just quit.
So I said, what do you think about Reddit? Like, do you not like Reddit?
I hate Reddit. I think Reddit's like a cesspool. I think it's an echo chamber of all the worst things about the subjects that I like.
Right. Okay. So, for example, let's just talk like MMA or jiu-jitsu. What do you hate about Reddit?
Every post is literally the dumbest thing that you've ever seen, only to be replied by dumber things.
Okay, so along those lines, what I have done is I've gone into the MMA subreddit and the jiu-jitsu subreddit, and
The jiu-jitsu subreddit's the worst because it's always stories and you're like, this didn't happen. Like, that's what it always is. It's like, today at my gym, I'm a 3-stripe white belt who's been training for 9 months, and I tapped out this purple belt 4 times, and he stormed off the mat. Do you think I'm going to get kicked out of the gym? And everybody's like, that didn't happen.
Yeah, dude.
This is just a scenario you made up, and you're bored, so you want to go to fantasy land and do jiu-jitsu World of Warcraft on Reddit. Like, you're out here, this didn't, like, what you just said didn't happen.
Oh, man. Okay, so as someone who generally likes Reddit, with that said, most of my Reddit is not like, first of all, I'm not on Reddit that much, but also like most of my Reddit isn't the MMA, jiu-jitsu side of things. It's just like obscure stuff like, I don't know, cool wood carvings and stuff like that.
I need to get on that Reddit.
Yeah, dude, there's some like cool stuff on there.
I do have to say the wrestling community on Reddit is not terrible.
Yeah, okay. Well, we didn't touch on that today. Today is strictly MMA and jiu-jitsu. So what I've done is I went into the MMA and the jiu-jitsu subreddit and I pulled out a couple questions I found, some of them are just statements I want your opinion on. Yeah, we're going to get Mike's reaction to these posts, which he has not seen before. So
Let's do it.
let's start with an MMA question. Should I do these in order? Let's see. Okay, we'll start with this. This is from our MMA, and it is a user named Blackman Batman, and he said, "Why did the UFC stop allowing fighters to get their own sponsors?" Followed by, "I was rewatching Jones versus Rampage, and I noticed that in addition to the insane amount of eye pokes, they were wearing sponsors on their gear. I know that the Reebok deal and the subsequent Venom deal has stopped this, but why is that? Allowing the fighters to get their own sponsors helped them make bank, and it didn't hurt the UFC's payout as they weren't paying them. The sponsors did. With all the stuff about underpaid fighters, it would benefit the UFC if they went back to allowing fighters to wear their own sponsors." What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think like it would benefit the fighters if they could get their sponsors back.
I agree.
Yeah, but I think like obviously it's not going to benefit the UFC to allow the fighters to do that. The UFC now like has control of all the sponsorship. Mm-hmm. So for one thing, I do think it's a cleaner look.
That is true. It definitely looks more professional.
But on the other side, the contradiction of it is the cage is littered with logos like a NASCAR race.
Right.
So it's like, all right, like you cleaned up the fighter appearance, right? Mm-hmm. But like the whole cage is covered in it. So it's like, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Now, with that being said, I understand that's a large portion of the UFC's revenue, which then in turn is, pays the fighters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I do wish the fighters could have, their own sponsorships. Mm-hmm. I wish it wasn't like a blanket deal. I think it was better then. If there was maybe a way to like clean up the look with it. Like, for example, maybe you got certain spots and the logos had to pass an assessment or something to keep with like the cleanliness of it. For example, if you look at like, now I'm not a big soccer guy, but from my understanding is that most soccer jerseys, the front of like, it's like a company,
right, exactly,
like a company logo on the front of like a soccer jersey. So like, if each team can be sponsored by like its own like thing, like like a fighter could, and maybe the scarcity of availability on the trunks actually helps the fighter drive up like
Right,
the
the
price.
price.
I do know in the past when the UFC did allow sponsorships, there was a cost to be able to sponsor a fighter. It was $50,000.
To the UFC?
Yeah.
Oh,
To
interesting.
get it now, that would then behoove you to sponsor multiple fighters,
Right.
Because it was like a one-time
Right, just to get
payment,
into
like
the UFC.
I don't know if it was yearly or
Right.
whatever, but like yeah,
Interesting. And we discussed this before on podcasts about how like that's kind of what we think is the best thing is use a standardized fight short. So they're like, hey, you have X amount of styles you can choose from, you have X amount of colors you can choose from, but they're all kind of, in the same vein of
Yeah.
things. And again, having specific spots on the shorts. And like you said, supply demand, obviously an oversimplified way to look at business, but if there's a lower supply, then the demand may be higher potentially, and you can get a higher price for those fighters. So,
what do you do if a fighter comes out with an illegal thing on the shorts?
well, I think you just have the UFC print all of the shorts and have them in the locker room, and then it's just like, what are they gonna do? Make their own?
Good
I guess
point.
you probably could.
Probably could. So the reason I said that is what popped in my head immediately is like Jordans. Are you familiar with how the brand?
I mean, I
like
know what they
Nike-
are.
So Nike, like when Jordan first did a deal with Nike or whatever. One of the things was in the NBA, a certain percentage of the shoe had to be white, right?
Oh.
And I'm
Like
not
the NBA's rule was
the NBA rule
Okay.
was like I'm not sure, but
Right.
let's just say 50% white. Well, Jordans were like red and black, and they were not 50% white. So he took a $5,000 fine every time he wore them.
Oh, but the
Right.
advertising was
And it was like you couldn't pay $5,000 for that advertisement,
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
yeah, type of thing. So it was like turned out to be a really like great
interesting.
idea.
Interesting. Oh, that's cool. So I thought I'd start you off with that one because it seemed a little bit,
Mild.
mild. Yeah, I didn't think it
I
would.
they didn't think it was bad.
Yeah, no. Okay. We might even just go in order. This. All right. So this next one, also from the MMA. I might just do all MMA and then jiu-jitsu. This is a guy
boy.
named Lethro Huawei ACC4, and he asks, why aren't foot stomps to the feet in the clinch more common? A lot of times when fighters are clinched against the fence, when there's nothing much to work with, why aren't foot stomps more common? When timed right, it says times right, but I'll extrapolate. When timed right, they're absolutely horrible. I remember McGregor foot stomping Poirier's foot, and Poirier's reaction was as if a lightning bolt went through him. Mendes utilized them a little against Aldo, and they look so painful. Surely it keeps the ref off your back for inactivity, and because they don't seem to happen so much,
It
fighters...
certainly would not keep the ref off your back.
Hold on, wait. You're going to love this part. And because they don't seem to happen so much, fighters don't really prepare for it. What are your thoughts on this?
It's just like retarded. Like, what do you do? Like, what are you talking about, dude? Stomping on the feet? Like, yeah, I mean, like, I guess if you're like bored and there's nothing else going on there, like you stomp on the foot, that's not going to stop inactivity. That's going to just kind of be like, oh, wow, look how inactive this position is that we've resorted to foot stomps. And yeah, they can cause some damage that could like, pay off like throughout the fight or whatever. But it's just a low level like technique.
It's like trying
what I
to
mean?
like punch someone while they're choking you.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, I don't think it's completely valueless, but I think that this dude thinks the value of them is way higher than what they really are.
It's like when Connor hit Cowboy with that shoulder strike, and everyone's like, "Shoulder strikes are the new thing,"
yeah.
and it's like, first of all, not really. Like,
Yeah.
like, didn't you guys notice that like right before that he kicked him in the head, and like maybe that's why he was hurt.
Right, yeah.
And also everyone's like, "Oh, it's like this new thing," and it's like you could watch like Anderson Silva, Stephan Bonner, and like he does the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, I guarantee you there's a million fights before that where that
where people
happened.
yeah.
Let me ask you this then, kind of as a follow up to this. In your fighting career, which would you have 20 fights, something like that?
23.
Okay, so in 23 fights, have you ever been concerned or had a foot stomp happen to you and been like, oh, this is bad?
No.
Have you ever been concerned you were going to get your feet stomped on?
No.
Okay. So overall, what do you think about this, the premise of this question?
I just think it's a dumb question. I think it's from, I think this person is just like uneducated on like the actuality of it, and it's something that probably from the outside looks convenient. But like, there's stuff like that all the time where you're like, oh, why don't you just do this? And then you get in there and you do it, and you're like, oh, that'd be very difficult and not really like worth it. Like, you know what I mean?
So I remember some of the comments under this guy's question, and a lot of them said that. A lot of them were talking about like there's usually better options in the clinch than just like stomping on someone's feet. I like what you said, where you're like, no, this proves the inactivity. Look what we've resorted to here. You know what I mean?
Also, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just like that easy to stomp on someone's foot either, right? Like, you're like, if you have to have your body positioned in a certain manner to maintain the pin against the cage, right? Like, you're
Right.
just going to take a whole post away, right? So, like, stomping on the foot is not like as easy as you think, right? Like, I don't think you can stomp my foot.
I mean, think about it in the clinch, right? Like, if I'm trying to throw someone, what do I hope they do? I hope they throw a knee, because that's
Yeah.
going to be the easiest time to throw them.
Right, yes.
So if someone goes to stomp a foot, even if the foot doesn't come off the floor that much, you've literally just removed 50% of your base.
Right.
And like, I might be able to exploit that.
Yep, yep. All
So,
right.
okay, let me ask you this then, on kind of like a larger scale thing. Do you think that Reddit might be a good place for someone like this, who clearly, just ignorant to, what it's like to be in the clinch? Do you think it's good for then people who have more experience to share that?
To what? Go on Reddit and like tell them this thing? Like, dude, like it's not gonna go well for you. Like, if I went on Reddit and I commented that, a bunch of like idiots are gonna be like, no, this dude did it and that guy did it, and it actually two people have had their feet broken in the UFC doing it, and it impacted the way that they were able to kick later in the fight, and that happened twice. It happened twice in the UFC. Oh yeah, what are we on, UFC 303? Oh cool. How many fights are on a card? Oh, 10 each. Oh, so we're over 3,000 fights. Oh, how many UFC fight nights have there been? You remember UFC on Versus?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Remember that? How about all the Ultimate Fighters and stuff? So you have two instances that literally come down to be 0.02%
Yeah.
have been effective, right? Now, how many foot stomps have been ineffective?
Right.
You know what I mean? For you to like, oh, how much time are you going to spend on developing a strategy around your foot stomping? Like, get out of here. And like, but they're going to come in all crazy with that, and it's going to give me anxiety, and I'm going to want to figure out who they are in real life.
All right, so you're not convinced on Reddit yet. Okay, let's bring another question from our MMA. This one is from King Radic, and he wants to know, why do so many kickboxers transition to MMA? He said, I've seen so many kickboxers leave the sport and go to the UFC, and it seems sad that no one, let alone the top kickboxers themselves, don't seem to want to stay in the promotions like Glory or Rise or even K1 back in the day. I know MMA is considered a better fighting style, but surely kickboxers don't all chase the money. And you know what? I knocked some of this off. Nope, I didn't. That was a different question. All right. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think there's just not as many opportunities. I think the money's less. I think at this point in time, you're probably fighting, for money. You are a prize fighter at the end of the day. And then on top of it, there is, if you're talking about like the art of it, like if you're not fighting for money, then you're fighting for the art of it. And that's what you're going to MMA for, right? What did MMA first get like created with the ideal of, is to figure out which fighting style is best. So you're going into MMA proving that your fighting style, as long as you can mix it with the other ones efficiently, is not an ineffective fighting style. You know what I mean? That's why jiu-jitsu, like, that's one of the things about jiu-jitsu is like, hey, can these jiu-jitsu guys, can they transition to MMA, right? But you also have your avenues. If you want to stay in your arena, you can do so. But a lot of the best want to go and like fly the flag. It's like okay, like, like you're the champion of your house, right, and so yeah, you're gonna go like fly the flag, represent Muay Thai in the greatest like combat sport,
the most permissive environment.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this: what are your thoughts on kickboxing as a base for MMA as opposed to other striking sports such as boxing or Muay Thai?
I think that's a deeper question. I reserve the right to change my mind.
100%. I put you on the spot with this.
On everything I say here, because I'm not thinking about it deeply. I think that on the surface, Muay Thai makes the most sense because it's the most permissive. All right. Now, while it being the most permissive, perhaps it gives you a different understanding of pacing and range that may not translate as well to MMA. In which I feel like boxing gives you a way more realistic pacing. Maybe kickboxing does as well. I feel like I'm a little too inexperienced with kickboxing as a standalone. Yeah, I would say that maybe kickboxing is even better due to the pacing and range. Whereas there is value to Boxing is the minuscule use of it, right? Like it's like you are emphasizing such like a smaller portion, and that smaller portion is incredibly valuable.
Yes.
Right? So you get really skilled deeply due to the game of boxing in an area that is going to have a large payoff.
Absolutely.
So what was the question?
The question was, if between those three striking sports, boxing, kickboxing, and Muay Thai, how do you see kickboxing holding up as a base for MMA?
Dude, it honestly might be the middleman.
You know what's crazy? I've spent some time thinking about this, right? And I pretty much, everything you said was pretty much everything that went through my head, right? Like initially your thought is like, oh, Muay Thai must be the best because they have clinch, right?
It's your jack of all trades, dude.
But yeah, dude, exactly.
Like Muay Thai, like I said,
you're saying kickboxing is the jack of all trades.
Yeah, Muay Thai, like I said, is the best because it does allow you to use all the weapons that you will then also be able to use in MMA, whereas boxing allows you the least of that. However, the pacing and range of boxing is more realistic towards MMA than it is Muay Thai.
I disagree with the second part of that. I think the range of boxing is way closer than MMA.
It is way closer, but I think the range of MMA, I think the range of boxing being close is more similar to MMA. I think an MMA range, due to takedowns, the ideal range for you to use all your offensive tools optimally is closer than it is in Muay Thai.
Right, and that's, yeah, exactly, that's my point, is that like as a striker, right, like let's say that, you know, I'm coming from kickboxing, you're coming from wrestling. I want to keep as much distance between us as possible, right? Whereas if we're boxing, I want to stay pretty close, relatively, you know what I mean? Because of the threat of the takedown. So in range-wise, I think that kickboxing has a better carryover to MMA than boxing does.
So what I would say is that they both like we're seeing like a pro of the very intricate niche of boxing, and we see the value that brings, especially with a lot of the motion, the lateral motion in boxing. A lot, not even just the lateral, but the vertical and lateral motion in boxing.
Yes.
Right, like Muay Thai, like there's a little bit of motion, but like
way less.
Like the head's like here, like almost like a lot of the time the head is right here.
Totally.
Whereas in boxing, the head
constantly moving, right?
Like it's
three-dimensionally.
Yes.
Moving
Oh
through
yeah,
space.
yeah. It's hitting all different types of like boxes. Like if you thought about like a Rubik's cube, you had a Rubik's cube in your hand,
right?
And you're holding a Rubik's cube, and you're like, all right, put the head in the very center.
Right.
The head can literally move into any of those boxes. No, that's not just left and right. It's not just up and down. It's not just catty corner. It's also forward and backward.
Yep.
So you can go, forward up to the left, down backward to the right. Yeah.
The other thing about like boxing is that in MMA, do you remember, I think it actually might be in this UFC Performance Institute stuff, or it might have been when we were out there and they were talking about this. Or you know what? We'll start with that. Like the majority of knockouts in the UFC occur from hands, right? And we could actually make arguments for both sides on that. But how about this? In traditional, in stadium Muay Thai, when someone is down on the cards and they know they need a knockout, you know what they do?
They start boxing.
You know what I mean? So like there's definitely value to that. The other reason why I think you're really spot on with Muay Thai not perhaps being as good of a base as we might think is that the rules of Muay Thai dictate that you do stuff that won't work in MMA, right?
Yeah.
So a 5-round fight, that means the first round you're chilling, right? So how many times have we seen guys who have a million stadium, circuit fights, and they go to one and they lose the first round because they're just like chilling and hanging out, right? The other thing is certain techniques, right? So like in Muay Thai, knees and kicks to the body score more than everything else. So they're going to throw a ton of those when perhaps in MMA you might be better off attacking the head more and trying to get knockouts, right?
Yeah.
And worrying less about looking pretty. Same with shin blocking, right? How many great shin blocks do we see in the UFC? Like
not a
lot. Yeah, exactly. Like we're talking about going to the body, not like checking kicks.
Yeah. Body.
So. And also like the clinch being used as a stalling technique is valuable in Muay Thai perhaps, whereas in MMA, good
you gotta
luck,
be active.
You might get taken down. So I went from thinking the exact same thing, Muay Thai is the best, to pretty much everything that we just talked about with kickboxing being that kind of jack of all trades. You're going to get the pace.
The jack of all trades is what I'm trying to say.
You're going to get the distance,
right? You're not getting the best of either, but you're getting like you're settling for your middleman.
And with recent champions like Israel Adesanya and Poatan, I think that kickboxing has really proven itself to be like a really great base for MMA.
I agree.
Yeah.
cool.
Ready for the next
Yeah, I am.
next question? That went on a fun little tangent.
That did.
All right, this one I very much like, and I think you're gonna like. This one is from Blandino. Blandino wants to know, if you could change one rule of the unified rules of MMA, which would it be and why? And I want to be specific here. We're not talking about judge or scoring and judging. We're talking about the rules.
The rules.
Because I thought you might go somewhere else with that.
If I could change one rule, what would I really? If I magic wand, I get one change.
Because I've got two that really jump out at me, but I think one becomes more valuable. And I wonder if your head's in the same place.
Dude, all right. So this is gonna be hot. Like this is gonna be. What do people say all the time? Unpopular opinion.
Okay, hot take.
Hot take. This is a hot take. I think you should be allowed to grab the cage.
I like it.
I think you should be allowed to grab the cage.
I also thought you were going to say you should wear hats and corners, but
Oh, you should wear hats and corners.
But again, that's why I
No,
specified.
hold on. I want to say that one because I think like I might be one of the only people to ever have said that.
Dude, I am so on board.
Yeah, I think you should be allowed to grab the cage. It's so hard to not grab the cage.
Yes.
Like it's like it hurt. Like it's hard to not have your fingers go through if you're posting on it, and you got to be able to post on it. You know what I mean? And if it makes takedowns harder, it makes takedowns harder. Like whatever.
Rip the dude off the cage. You know?
Rip the dude off the cage to take him down in the open. Things like that.
Can you think of any other sport where there is like something in the environment of the sport, like I don't know, something the way the field is set up or whatever that makes something that is just so natural a foul? Like I'm trying to think if there's like an equivalency.
I can't think
sport.
of one.
Me either. Which like it's almost like saying like I don't know, like if you're dunking a basketball, it becomes illegal if this is the rim, if your hand crosses that plane at all.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like can you imagine if that was the rule and then like the refs go back and they're watching film and they're like, "Oh, your pinky went down in the rim.
Yeah.
That doesn't count." Like wouldn't basketball fans be like, "Dude, what's going?" You know what I mean? Maybe that's a bad equivalency in a bad
I don't know if that's the one I would really magic wand though. Like maybe like you'd be able to knee the head of a grounded opponent.
See, that's the one.
That's
that and 12
one.
to 6 elbows for me.
Oh, 12 to 6 elbows. Just because it's actually dumb.
Right.
But it's so dumb that like
it's almost become like a fun part of the sport.
And to an effect, like every rules meeting, they're like, no 12 to 6. That means sealing the floor. Now listen, 11:59.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like you know you
can get around
basically
very
every
easily.
12 to 6 elbow, they could just be like, oh, there was a little. It was like it wasn't perfectly straight. Let's get your protractors out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
All right, get your level out. Let's plumb this up. Was that plumb? Like
Right.
stealing the floor? You know what? The cage is on a little bit of a slant, so technically not. Like you know, it's like crazy. So that's kind of dumb one, or maybe like no stand-ups.
That's another good one. I
think if I had to really choose, and they're like, Mike, we're actually going to do this, I would probably go knees to the head of a grounded opponent.
Brother, you took the words out of my mouth. That's the one I would go.
Here
with
goes
as
why
well.
I feel like that I add value to this. Dude, that hurts my style.
Yes and no. It hurts your style if you weren't as good.
Let me get the street cred here. It hurts my style.
But you're okay. Go ahead.
No, that's what would make people believe me more. They're like, oh, it actually works against you. So why, it must be an honest take.
Okay, let me tell you my take on that. It hurts the style of the wrestler who's willing to just like grab a single and hang out while stretched out for a while.
Let me tell you something, dude. I am that wrestler. I'm willing to grab a single and stretch out. You can't knee me in the head.
In that position,
I don't believe that you can knee me in the head.
No, absolutely not there. But I'm saying in the transitions after that, perhaps. But that's also not the kind of wrestler you are in MMA. Like, find me a takedown where you're hanging on some dude's leg for like 30 seconds and just being smushed there and whatever.
Even if I was, you can't knee me in the head.
Right, but what I'm saying is the transition out of that...
I'm not saying you're not allowed. I'm saying you are incapable.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is you personally, you're blowing through those hips. Those wrestlers who do hang out there and they're tired and stuff, once you break that that grip, then they can, like, someone can angle out and then land a knee or something, right? So, it would hurt Mike and he still believes the rule. But, yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Okay, you ready for the next one? I 100%.
I don't even remember the question.
The question was if you could change one of the unified rules. And, dude, I'm so glad you got
Was
there.
that a Reddit question?
It was a Reddit question, yeah.
I thought you were going to hit me with questions that were going to upset. These are good questions.
I specifically found some good ones. Also, dude, the way I searched
Or are you
it,
trying to make me like Reddit? Is that the theme here?
No, I'm not trying to make a follow up where we actually make an LTYC account and we answer
I'm not
questions.
doing it.
I think I got one that was gonna piss you off.
That's what I
We'll
thought this
see.
was gonna be.
The other thing, it was kind of difficult for me to find them because I remember scrolling through Reddit before and like seeing a bunch of dumb stuff. But when I just pulled up like the MMA stuff, a lot of it was just like reposted news, and it's just like, look what John Jones said, and I'm like, I'm not gonna bring this up. And just to even get to questions, I searched like within that Reddit, and I searched like how or why, and I got like a bunch of these questions, and there were some dumb ones that like,
Dude, you gotta search the other day.
okay,
Because then it's a story about how.
maybe if we do a follow up, we'll do that. But anyways, all right. So the next one is from Balkan Viking 007.
Wow.
The title is UFC Heavyweight Division. Why is it always bad? So this guy says, I don't understand why UFC Heavyweight Division always is bad. I think English is a second language here. So I'm going to read it exactly how it's written. I mean, there's been good fighters like Miocic, DC, Crow Cop, well, maybe not in the UFC, but you know what I mean, etc. But the division has never been stacked, right? If we look back to the days of K1 and Pride, it always seemed like there was no other division than heavyweight. Everybody was jacked and out of this world exciting to watch, like Randleman versus Fedor, Crow Cop versus Fedor,
All right.
K1, Eretz, Hoost, Bronco
You ready?
Sakatic, first K1 Grand Prix winner, amazing record. Dude, I'm only halfway through this. Bonjowski, Jorgen Kruth, Mike
right,
Bernardo,
we're done.
Andy Hug, Leko, etc. But now it's like nothing, and especially UFC has never, from what I recall, had a stacked heavyweight division, right? And heavyweight division seems to have changed a bit, and the weight also maybe. Before the guys used to be around 100 kilos, and now these guys maybe go to light heavyweight with a question mark. In Glory, almost every heavyweight is like 115, 130 kilos. That's an insane weight. Thoughts on this, guys? I'd like to watch heavyweight the most, but it seems like there's nobody left.
All right, then I don't think you like to watch heavyweight the most. I think you're just an idiot. All right, so first off, all right, let's talk about is the heavyweight division actually shallow, or is there just a lack of athletes? And are you nostalgically remembering glory days of past? So you're nostalgically remembering glory days of past. Those dudes suck. Okay. At that same exact time frame, there were dudes who were 170 pounds who were so much better at kickboxing and at whatever sport, combat sport than them. But those promotions were showing you these freak show dudes, the bigger than life dudes, similar to pro wrestling, right? But there were dudes at the lower weight classes who were far superior technically, but they didn't pass the eye test that these promotions thought you guys wanted to see. You wanted to see like giants, you know what I mean? Like yeah, people you couldn't relate to. So at the time, had you been able to compare it to the lighter weight classes, you would have also noticed that those guys were not nearly as technically skilled as the lighter weight classes. Okay, so you're having a nostalgic memory based off what was presented to you, based off of the environment at the time, which was not true. Your life's a lie. Okay, now let's move on to today's day. Okay, all right. You're 6'8", 265 or 285 pounds. You're going to need to cut down to 265, which you can do from 285 easy. All right, freak athlete. You are not going to make pennies fighting.
Yeah.
You're going to be in the NFL, the NBA. You're going to be playing some professional sport where, dude, like league minimum in the NFL, you're making more than 99% of the UFC rosters.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Easy.
Yeah. So we're not grabbing those best athletes. Why does lightweight and bantamweight and featherweight seem so phenomenal? What else are you going to do?
Right.
What, you're going to go play like basketball? You're going to play football?
You're going to be a
You know what I
gymnast?
mean? Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, all right, so we're actually getting, our sport is gathering higher tier athletes in those weight ranges, right? And those higher tier athletes are harder to get in the heavier weight ranges because we don't have enough to offer to them, right? The competition for garnering those heavier weight athletes is a lot more difficult. And then the last thing I want to say is just like the human body, okay? Right? It's a bell curve, all right? So athleticism is going to naturally be spread relatively equal throughout, right? But the fact that, you know, there's far less giants than there are dudes who are 170 pounds means that there are far less athletes, right? So like, let's say that 1 out of every 100 dudes is a freak athlete. All right. Well, we got 10,000 170 pounders. We got 200 285 pounders. There you go.
Yep.
There you go. You got 2 freaks here, and you got 100 there. So that's all there is to it. And that's just all. That's how combat sports is just going to be. And the reason it's never going to change for that is also scarcity of opportunity. So in the NFL, right, they need a bunch of big dudes. They need a bunch of them. All right. Only one person can be the heavyweight champion.
Right.
Right. Whereas, dude, there's 5 offensive linemen on all 32 NFL teams.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So there's space for you there. So even if the heavyweight champ made like something ridiculous more than what these linemen are getting paid, which they are not. Every lineman in the NFL, every starting lineman in the NFL is being paid more than the UFC heavyweight champion. There's just more opportunity even in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? What I say, 5 out of 32, right? So like, dude, right there alone, you have 170 opportunities compared to 1.
Right. And even if it's not just the one, let's say that being on the UFC heavyweight roster like pays you decently. Let's just call it comparable.
Pull up the UFC heavyweight roster. What's that? 28.
Right. Exactly.
What's that? 28. Dude, an NFL team probably has 8 offensive linemen dressed for a game.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
The other thing, I like what you said about how like you're thinking nostalgically, because we all like to think about like, oh man, Crow Cop and Fedor, those days were wild. And it's like, okay, but like how many of those fights can you name? How many of those fighters can you name? How many heavyweights throughout all of MMA do you think are like top tier athletes that you like are dying to watch, right? Like I think we could crank them out right now. It's like Fedor, Crow Cop, Kane, JDS, Overeem.
What are we doing?
We're naming heavyweights that are like top tier like athletes.
Verdum.
Like, you would want to watch Verdum, Aspinall, Jones. We're having a hard time getting to 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't think that even if we look throughout, even like the legends of like Pride, like Vochanchin and stuff, like.
Yeah.
It's not as deep as I think this guy's remembering.
Yeah.
The other thing is too, like, I think it sounds like he's a big Pride fan, which I am as well. Dude, they were extra juicy. You know what I mean? And like that'll make the heavyweight division a lot more entertaining, because if you take a B class athlete and you just juice them up, that's when you get Bob Sapp.
In past episodes, we talked about how lower level MMA, which is not a diss, it just means the lowest level of MMA, it's where you start, can sometimes be some of the most exciting.
Yeah.
Right? So you didn't know what level you were watching in Pride?
Right, yeah.
That was your only point of reference. Right? You know what I mean? So
dude, also, and maybe this is off topic and you can just shut this down if you think it's not going to be entertaining, but also, just being athletic doesn't necessarily carry over to fighting. So, easy example, we just saw Greg Hardy get knocked out in another boxing match recently.
Yeah.
Right on. Like, do you think that there's something about like even being a top tier athlete not necessarily transitioning to fighting, or is that kind of just like off topic?
I mean, like, it doesn't, because you're a top tier athlete, it means that you have a deeper toolbox. You know what I mean? If I have a bunch of tools, doesn't mean I know how to use them.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Also, sometimes, like, with all these tools, sometimes, like, it's like, dude, if I just had a hammer, I'd just knock this wall down. But I'm like, ooh, should I use this, or should I use this saw? Should I use that? Right? Like, you start, like, overanalyzing it. But let's move on past that.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's bring up this next one. All right. I think you're going to like this one. This is the last MMA one, then I got some jiu-jitsu ones for you.
Sweet.
This one is asked by Pandemic Partners. Says, why do you think we don't see Fedor/Kane levels of ground and pound anymore? Is it just because almost everyone has at least a decent ground game now, so people are more tentative to strike on the ground? There used to be guys, Fedor and Kane being the main two, that if they got you down, you were going to get fucked up. Even early John had it. I mean, he beat a guy up so bad with ground and pound that he got disqualified for it, and his objective is to beat the other guy up. But even he went away from it himself in the middle and especially latter half of his career. Even DC moved away from it, from all ground and pound towards the end of his career, and became more of a clinch striker and control wrestler. Nowadays, there's not a single guy I can think of lauded for their ground and pound anymore. Why do you think this is?
Because ground and pound is so hard to do, and it looks easy. So I actually have a great story about this. So I was teaching a jiu-jitsu class for this one, it was called a yeshiva school. And on Sundays we would go there and we'd be like their gym class. And they would do an hour of jiu-jitsu, and I taught like 3 times there. And you know, they're all like high school age kids. So I knew that they would think MMA was cool, right? They didn't know much about it. They actually asked me if I fought Conor McGregor and stuff. But like, you know, they knew like the gist of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, you know, I didn't want to just, I wanted to present. I was like, hey guys, like I'm a pro MMA fighter, right? Like, you know, try to like get some of their like get them
Attention.
intrigued,
Yeah, exactly.
you know? And they asked me one of like the coolest questions I've ever been asked. One of the kids was like, because like I talked about how like I grew up wrestling, and then I started doing MMA, and like, you know, now I also like have an emphasis on jujitsu, and you know, through that, this is how I think it helps me. And they were like, what's the biggest thing that surprised you when you stopped wrestling and started doing MMA? And I was like, how hard it is to hit somebody on the ground, right? Like I just thought I would just, my thing was like, I'm gonna do MMA, I'm just gonna double leg you, and then I'm just gonna punch you until the ref stops me.
Yeah.
And then I went in there, I double legged them, and I went to punch them until the ref stopped me, and I was like, well, I can't, it's so hard to hit you.
Yeah.
Ground and pound is not very easy. It's way harder than you think, right? Like, and I think with people being more well-rounded and skilled in jiu-jitsu, it makes it exponentially harder to land clean strikes on the ground. So much so now these kids weren't skilled at all or anything, but I gave every single kid who wanted the opportunity. They were bare fists. I was like, here, get in my guard. I was like, you guys can hit me as hard as you want. I was like, I promise not one of you will touch my face. You know what I mean? And all I'm going to do, I'm not going to hit you back. I'm not even going to put you in submissions or anything. I'm just going to purely not let you hit me in my face. And like 4 of them tried, and like none of them could hit me in the face. And then all the other ones were like, well, if he couldn't do it, then I'm not going to be like the tougher guys did it,
right.
you know? And I was like, yeah, it's like ridiculously hard to hit somebody. So it requires almost a disproportionate level of grappling. All right. Now, that still exists in the UFC. So why aren't we seeing more devastating ground and pound off of like how you saw it in the past? Okay. There was a skill gap. Okay. So you could get the takedown, and people were defending in guard by like just straightening their arms. So there was opening. Now people are too good at guard. So in order to get to ground and pound positionings, you have to out grapple them to a fairly significant amount, right? That can still happen. That takes time. And in a 5-minute round, sometimes, you know, your return on investment isn't there for that to unfold. Right? So if you take DC, for example, all right, how long is it going to take for me to get Stipe down? All right. Okay. Well, I'm not just going to be able to like shoot in all willy-nilly and take him down. You know, he's a decent wrestler himself. He's got tools, and he's very skilled in MMA. So I got to chip away at that to be able to take him down. I don't know if I'm going to get one in the first round. If I get one in the first round, it's probably going to come in the last minute, because I'm going to have to chip away all his tools, like utilizing my striking to start setting traps and setups, and also compromise them in certain positions. So it's going to take me about 4 minutes to do that. Maybe I could get a takedown late in the round. Doesn't give me any time to grapple. All right. Okay, so now I'm looking like, okay, maybe I can get a takedown like in the first half of the second round, but now I only got 2.5 minutes. I got to hold him down too. And then I got to significantly out grapple him to get into a position where I can remove those defenses to where now I can land significant ground and pound. That was worth the return on investment, finishing style ground and pound. So now you're like, man, that's tough. So you know what? What's actually my best opportunity to get to this? Drop him. Drop him. Where do you see the most vicious ground and pound? After a knockdown. You don't see it come through a takedown and through grappling. It's after a knockdown. If you see it come through a takedown and through grappling, it's usually someone like got to like a decent position and landed a knockdown style punch that was on the ground, and now the person's in La La Land, and that's when you get to unload on your ground and pound, right? So it's just, it takes a long time to get yourself into a position in which you can do that. And the sport of MMA is set up for the striker. You know, the time constraints are for the striker. The stand-ups are for the striker. You know what I mean? So, you know, your window of opportunity is just far and few between, and it makes more sense efficiently to have had it come organically from a strike. And then when you're grappling, to grapple, because then you can grapple your way into a position in which you can actually remove those layer of defenses to land ground and pound that's worth it.
And I think that, like, I think this is kind of what you're saying is like the ground and pound is also different, right? Because I think what you're getting at is like to really get effective ground and pound, you need to get to like a dominant mount, right? Where you're either like Khabib style wrapping the legs, or you're like way up in the armpit sitting on the dude's chest or something like that. And like you said, it's going to take time to get there. Whereas like ground and pound from the past, I think like Mark Coleman style, like in the guard, that requires such a skill discrepancy. And a skill discrepancy, not, I'm going like this guy's got to be that much better. It should go like this, right? It's like the other guy's got to be really bad from his guard.
And that person didn't make it to the levels that you're watching.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I think the last guy we saw who really utilized ground and pound in the guard, I mean, correct me if you can think of someone else, but like, I think Chael's the last guy that we would see who like would regularly get in the guard and like get some good ground and pound off.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So I think a wave of where ground and pound, it's technique. So like technique needs to be developed from inside the guard. We're currently working on technique, and like, you know, what we're doing is like kind of taking a philosophy of understanding like, why can I not land these strikes? What's in the way? Okay, how can I remove these from being in the way? All right, well, I'm removing them with the tools I was going to strike with. Well, how can I keep a tool open? Things like that. Okay, well, how can I maintain my base in solid position while removing these tools, while leaving a tool open, and being able to generate enough power to make it even worth all this effort? So
that's I'll send this to you later if we remember. Someone commented on that with an article from Jack Slack. You familiar with Jack Slack?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's from like 10 years ago or something, and it's an article all about Fedor's ground and pound and how he would do a lot of things like differently. And I guess Fedor wrote a book about like this kind of stuff, which I looked into. I gotta try to find, but he would do things like put his hands on the ground, like specifically against Big Nog, because he knew that, you know, if his hands are on the mat, Big Nog's going to go for various submissions, locking up his hands, and that opened his the opportunity to land some ground and pound. And how he did a lot of punching like during transitions, while he was passing, while, you know, there were just some interesting things in there.
Dude, Brian Stan, he was a WEC champ, fought in the UFC for a while. He was at our gym like 2014, 15, somewhere in that era. He was retired from MMA and he started doing commentary, and he was commentating for the ACC Football Network. So he was in town doing a pit football game, and he came to train at the gym. So we rolled around a little bit, and then he was like sharing some insight, and he used to bait Kimuras from Top Guard. So imagine he's in Top Guard, he'd post his hand, so you would sit up and go for a Kimura, he'd reach around to your back and grab your wrist, and then he would be able to strike with that hand. And it's like, okay, it's like, well, dude, that's some risky shit.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But like, you know what I mean?
Especially if you're doing that against Big Nog, like that's terrifying.
Right. I mean, like, yeah. So like, I mean, like, I wasn't against it or whatever, but like, you know, you understand, like, I mean, there's a risk with everything you're doing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I just think like, the payoff, the return on investment for people to spend a lot of time on the ground and pound, we just haven't like I think the wave's going to come. I think that's going to come. You're going to see it like come about. I think it's just a natural progression of sport. And I think right now the low-hanging fruit is striking. You know what I mean? So what I mean by low-hanging fruit, just to make sure everybody is on the same page as me, you have an apple tree, right? Are you going to let all the apples that you can just grab go rot and fall and go bad, so that way you can climb to the top of the tree and grab the hardest apples to get? Or are you going to get those low-hanging fruit, you know, before they go bad? And if any apple's going to go bad, make it the hard ones that are going to get. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's where we're at with ground and pound.
Yeah.
It's not the low-hanging fruit right now.
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on.
All right. Move me on, brother.
All right, so I got a couple now from RBJJ.
Nice.
Okay?
Nice.
So, this first one is from Literally Law, who is a white belt.
Good for him.
And he wants to know, why don't you see Kimuras at the highest level? Maybe it's just the people I watch, but I rarely see Kimuras used. Is there a reason for this? I keep getting Kimura and I have no real counter besides rolling. Am I missing something?
Yeah, you're missing something. You're a white belt. Relax, dude. Bro, you're going through the evolution that everybody has to go through. Dude, I can't tell you how many times I've been Kimura'd. It's ridiculous. Now, let me tell you how many times I've Kimura'd people. I don't know, probably not as much as I've been Kimura'd. But here goes the thing. I'm using a Kimura every day. Every day. And a lot of your favorite grapplers are using Kimuras. They're not finishing by Kimura because we have a vocabulary, or would that be the word vocabulary?
Vocabulary, like a system. Oh, what are you going to...
So when I...
Oh, yeah,
we all took it. We all took it. Yeah, we all took it the same way. Kimura. We all saw it in our head. As long as you know what a Kimura is and train jiu-jitsu. We all saw it in our head, right? It's getting his arm pulled behind his back, right? That is not how I would like people to think of Kimura. I would like people to think of a Kimura as the configuration in which you are locking your 2-on-1 against your opponent's arm. It so happens that there's a shoulder lock you can apply from there, which is widely known as the Kimura, right? But we are using the hold of the Kimura all over the place. It's actually probably one of the top 3 most common ways people take the back is from utilizing the Kimura grip, right? We're defending single legs, utilizing the Kimura grip. We're entering into arm locks, taking the back, utilizing the Kimura grip, right? We're going into arm locks from all different various positions, utilizing the Kimura grip. It's just only so often that you separate the hand to the outside of the body and apply the shoulder lock. Shoulder locks, why aren't you seeing this shoulder lock that you're asking for happen all the time? I don't know. Let's guess. Because it's a shoulder, brother. Okay, let's think. What's harder to isolate? Anything closer to the body is harder to isolate, separate from the body, so that way you can independently manipulate it. How many hip locks you seen lately? Close to the body, it's hard to independently manipulate it. Now let's look at a hip lock versus a heel hook, right? Let's stay on the upper body. Shoulder lock versus an elbow, all right? An arm lock, straight arm lock. Way more straight arm locks. Why? Well, because you can capture the shoulder. What's the next joint? It's the elbow, and then you have the hand, the other end of that lever, right? All right. How many different ways is your elbow bend?
Technically, there's rotation, but not nearly as much as a shoulder.
Right. Okay. A ball and socket joint, a hinge joint. All right. Think about breaking that, right? You know what I mean? How far do you have to move my shoulder in order to break my shoulder? You have to cover so much more. My shoulder is meant to go in this direction until it reaches the limitation of its mobility.
And you have to get the entire trunk to stop moving.
Yes, correct. So you have to control more to manipulate something that has more range of motion, right? And guess what? It's hard to break. It's hard to break things that move.
Yeah.
Right? It's very hard to break things that move. Think about a tree branch. You want to break a tree branch, okay? All right. Well, if that tree swaying, man, it's hard to get this to break. If it was like rigid, all dry rotted, and it wouldn't bend at all, just snap. It's easier to break, right? The motion makes it harder to break. You're seeing the same thing with what you're identifying as the Kimura, the shoulder lock from the Kimura hold. It's just a higher range of motion. You know what I mean? I think you need to switch your mind thought on it. Think about the hold as an avenue into other things, which will also in turn free up the shoulder lock more, because when threatened with multiple options, you have to focus on defending those multiple options, and you can't put all your eggs into the basket of defending the shoulder lock. So yeah, and I mean, here goes the thing, dude. I just said that to you. You would have came up with that on your own by purple belt. I didn't need to teach it to you. Your coach didn't need to teach it to you. Jiu-jitsu will teach it to you, And so is it good that I just told it to you right now? Maybe that expedited your learning process, all right? Or maybe that expedition of your learning process is going to hinder your development, because maybe it's not about getting there. Maybe it's about what you learn on how you got there. So I might have just ruined your whole jiu-jitsu career right there.
So that's interesting you say that, because I would say a large part of my jiu-jitsu knowledge is less from me going and doing it, and more so just like talking with you all the time, right? And you'll just drop in little, black belt gems on me. And one thing about this in particular, which really changed my view of jiu-jitsu, was, and I don't know if you told me, I think you did, whatever, maybe it wasn't these exact terms, but this changed my whole view on Kimuras. You're like, a Kimura is a position, not a submission. It could be a submission in the same way that a body triangle could be a submission, but it's mostly a position. And that just changed my view on things. It's oh, that makes so much more sense. And in that comment, thread, there were some black belts who said things like that, Kimura is more of a position that people use.
I'm so happy you're telling me that. I would if I saw that, I would upvote that.
There was also a black belt who said, or someone who said that they were a black belt, who said that I think he made a rhyme or something, but it was something like, when you get to a certain level, your habits just mean that you keep your, I think he said, keep your enemies close, but your elbows closer, or something like that.
I would have upvoted that because it's clever.
Yeah, and so yeah, I thought that was I don't want to say, it wasn't a bad question, but it was.
I thought it was a good question,
a decent question, and there were some great answers on it. You know what I mean?
All right, cool. So now I see what you're doing.
Okay, so
I'm gonna come back with another episode on defend this Reddit post. And you're going to have to defend them.
Okay. So I don't want to do that actually. But anyways, so this next one is from Admirable Use 2673. No belt level given. And the question is, favorite gi, why? Least favorite gi, why? Just as the title says, what's your favorite brand of gi and why? Which is your least favorite, why? Looking to upgrade, would like some guidance. Thanks.
My favorite gi is carbine. I love carbine gis. They're comfortable. They fit me good. Sometimes I have an armpit issue. I don't know if I got like big old muscles or something, but sometimes I feel like gis are pulling up on my armpits and stuff. They're durable, and they're not cluttered. You know what I mean? And so they're easily customizable as well. Because if you like all like fancy stuff, then patch it up, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they're durable. They're clean. You know, they last a lot. They fit my body type well.
They look cool.
Yeah, they look cool. So carbine would be my favorite.
Do you have a least favorite, or do you not want to shit on any brands?
I don't have a least favorite. I've never had a a gi where I was like, I'd never have this gi again. Like, you know what I mean? Prior to carbine, because carbine wasn't around then, Fuji, which is you know a super reputable brand, specifically. So what you got to understand though is like some gis, like certain. They have different cuts with certain styles. So I would get the Superito, right? That was my favorite gi until the carbine gi. And but I was a little of a slimmer person at that point in time, so I don't know if that cut would still fit me really great. A gi that, for example, now this is a really great gi. I have a lot of friends who absolutely love these gis, but the cut just wasn't for me. Storm. Dude, you had a Storm gi.
I had a Storm gi, and again,
cut was for you.
Exactly.
It was cut for you.
Built like Jack
Yeah,
Skellington.
so you probably loved it.
Yeah.
Mine, I just felt like, so what is referred to as the skirt, that's the part of the top below the belt. I just felt like it was like crazy long on me.
Yeah, it was perfect for me.
For what it took to meet like the breadth of my chest.
Yeah. That, and also I have a Fuji that is also like for me. You know?
Dude, I had some Superitas that were like just like soft.
Yeah.
Like, I just was like put them on and you just.
That's something too. The stiffness of a gi is really important, because if it's super stiff, especially when you're at the
it's like all
beginning,
starchy.
Yeah, man, that sucks.
Yeah. So, I had some good Fuji Superitas, but carbine's my premier gi.
That's your current go-to. Yeah.
Current, yeah.
All right. I have one more question for you. So this one is from...
In fact, I don't think I currently own... I do still have a Fuji Superito that doesn't fit me, but it's nostalgic. And I have the jacket, and I'm just going to... I don't have the pants. The pants went missing. Warren borrowed them. Never got them back. But I can't be upset because literally every gi that I've ever owned, Warren bought.
Yeah. So actually, here's a follow-up question.
So technically, it was his gi anyhow.
All right, I got a follow-up question for you. This is just me, not this guy. Do you have any like stylistic or color preferences on gis, or any strong opinions? Because I know some schools are like, oh, it has to be white, you know, like.
So I like your traditional colors. I like white, blue, and black. I love white gis, but I understand that they do become like dingy looking after several wears. So black gis are the best bang for your buck because they don't become dingy looking. Blue gis, I'm not against blue gis, but like one of the most common belts is blue, and blue on blue just doesn't like it looks weird to me.
I have a blue gi that looks awfully strange with my belt.
Yeah, so it's like whatever, but still, I'm in the so white, blue, and black. They just feel like really traditional and like basic. When you start getting into like wild colors, I'm not a fan. But you can be, and I don't think anything.
So you would never like make a rule at our gym. You would never be like only white gis, right? Like,
no, the only reason I would only allow certain gi colors or disallow certain gi colors is if they started staining the mats. You know what I mean? So I know like at AOJ, part of their like thing is like they look like super like clean, like so it's white mats. So you're only allowed to wear white gis to avoid staining the mats. So we with our light gray mats, we don't seem to have like a stain issue. Right. So yeah, I don't really care what gi you wear.
Well, I personally wouldn't wear like a crazy gi. I very much like the fact that there are people out there who like to have like the wild colors and stuff, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, like my good buddy Jared, he wears like orange gis. He wears all types of crazy color gis, and like it just fits his personality.
Exactly.
Really good.
Yeah.
So like I almost like don't want to see them in a regular game.
Exactly.
Like make me sad.
That's one of the things I love about like our job and our gym is just like we have unique people there, and I don't want to stifle that at all. I want to encourage that. So yeah, interesting. All right, I got one more question.
But like you're only unique because you're unique. If everybody started doing it, you wouldn't be unique anymore.
Right.
So then I wouldn't care.
Right.
Just like I want you to be unique. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't want like 95% of the gym wearing like all different crazy colors. I'd prefer 95% of the gym wear your standard colors. That way those people that truly are unique stand out.
Just be authentically yourself and everything will work out. All right, so this is the last question I got for you. This one is from Colonel Chagi, who says he's a blue belt. English is definitely not the first language here, so I'm just going to read this as it was written. You'll be able to extrapolate what this means. It says, why Ronda crosses her legs while armbar? I kept hearing that you shouldn't do, but Ronda, which is master of armbars, is doing all the time. Why?
Okay, so it depends on what kind of armbar you're doing. So a lot of people say don't cross the legs when you're doing the armbar because they're teaching a specific like armbar. All right. Now, there's variables and things change. Okay. So when would I cross my legs? I would cross my legs if pulling my heels back towards my butt would be beneficial to counter your motion, to hold you still. So like, let's say like I'm on my back in a guard and you're trying to stand up. Well, then I might cross my legs to bring my heels towards my butt, which brings your shoulders together, which kind of like
compresses everything.
Like compresses and bundles you, right? Now, if you were trying to stack into me, I would uncross my legs and I would like my heels would be going down like fangs, right? With my knees both going towards your head to put pressure into an area where you no longer have a post because the arm that would have been the post over there is now, between my legs. So there's no like one way is the right way, one way is the wrong way. It's situational.
It's like having your hands low when you're striking.
Yeah, it's completely situational. Now, if you're crossing your legs, naturally your knees spread, all right, which leaves a little bit more of an opening in there. Whereas if you uncross your legs, you can keep your legs a little tighter together, which leaves less of an opening. But at the same time you're leaving less of an opening, you may be giving a path of withdrawal, all right? So if I notice you taking advantage of the path of withdrawal, right, then maybe it makes sense for me to cross my legs, pull my heels towards my butt to, again, compress and keep you in. And if I'm keeping you in that manner, then it does not necessarily matter how tight my thighs are to be able to apply the braking motion. So it's just a circumstantial issue. The circumstance in which he is seeing Ronda break the arm is with the opponent in a supine position, meaning laying on their back with the arm extended. So what you're seeing happen is Ronda has her heels under, I'm not even looking at this, as you can tell because you're watching me. Ronda has her heels underneath the opponent's shoulder, which is then she's heeling back, which is pulling her opponent's shoulders like this in towards their chin, right? Which allows her to then break the grip and extend that one arm. All right, and then there's where she gets her break.
Dude, it's crazy because exactly what you just said, that was the picture that was on that post, is her, legs crossed, like getting under that shoulder, starting to bring it up a little bit.
Now, what happens when she gets under that shoulder in that supine position? Think about it. I want everybody watching this, lock your hands. Imagine your right arm is getting arm locked. All right, okay, so now your grip's breaking, your arm's extending. All right, what do you want to do? You want to move, right? Well, when your shoulders are being compressed like this, all right, and you're being hugged with the legs. The legs are being hugged around there. All right, roll to your right. Oh, there's the crotch. Roll to your left. Oh, there's the heel. Roll up. Oh, there's the knee. Oh, roll down. Oh, there's the other knee. Like you're being compressed. You know what I mean? So it's eliminating motion in that instance.
Motion in the body as opposed to motion in the arm, which you were talking about with pinching the knees.
And what do you need to do? You want to immobilize. You want to immobilize the trunk. When you capture the shoulder. All right, so now that you have a capture over the shoulder, what else are you going to capture? The wrist, all right, which allows you to put a fulcrum where? At the elbow. And since I have a hold at your shoulder with my hips, and I have a hold at your wrist with my arms, and I have a fulcrum in the middle, I can break it over top of, the joint that I'm trying to break.
Right on. Well, that concludes all of the questions that I pulled from Reddit.
So none of those questions were like terrible. I thought that this was gonna set me off.
There was a part of me that was like trying to make that happen, but then again, it might have just been the way that I searched for these questions.
Yeah, these were reasonable questions.
Yeah, and also there may have been an ulterior motive trying to set up
I'll tell you what, I'm not on board but I'm not as far off board as I was.
All you LTYC fans, you might get closer to seeing the Mike literally answering from an official LTYC Reddit account, answering some questions. So
Here's the thing that I want to be able to know the real, like I want it, like I don't want just a screen name. I want to know, like I want it associated with like a social media account so I can know who that person really is.
Okay.
So if they fire back, I can go find them.
I'm not sure we can guarantee that, but
Then I just won't answer their questions because I hate them.
fair enough.
Right on. All right, is that all?
That's all I got.
All right, another awesome episode of LTYC. We'll catch you guys next time.